so much for inviting us here today. I am thrilled to be moderating these two exceptional gentlemen here today. It's our ambition to share with you a story that bridges projects to finance. And I appreciate we are speaking to an incredibly well-informed audience, but bear with me while I level set on what is the energy transition. So as our topic is energy transition, the points that we should draw upon are not only energy supply, but energy demand. And it would be remiss of me as Bloomberg on the stage not to share a couple of basic data points. So when we look at energy supply broadly, globally, we're looking at about 80% fossil fuel based and about 20% non-fossil fuel. And when we look at energy demand, and forgive my simplification of data here, we're looking at the demand about 50% in industrial processes, about 25% in transport, and about 25% in real estate. And when we talk to you about energy transition, we're looking at reducing the carbon profile of the supply, and we are looking at the electrification of industrial processes and transport on the demand side. So before I start, maybe, Horst, if I could turn to you very quickly. So as chairman of Smart Energy, would you share with our audience who Smart Energy is and what you do?
Thank you. Well, we are basically an investor in renewable energy and into the energy transition. So that's our main area of activity. We do provide energy solutions for supplying data centers with green electrons. But also, we're very active in the field of developing projects for the sustainable aviation fuel. So these are the two fields, roughly 300 people, acting mainly in Europe, but expanding globally, also here in the region.
Wonderful. And Fabrice, Eiffel Investment, could you explain a little around your company?
Sure, good morning. Eiffel Investment Group is an investment fund specialized in the energy transition and decarbonization field. It's a company I created back in 2008, at the time as part of the Louis Dreyfus Group. And we are financing energy transition, production, storage, efficiency, decarbonization with private equity, with private debt and infrastructure. We manage approximately $10 billion.
Fantastic. Great authorities on this topic. So, Horst, if I could turn to you, there is absolutely a perception that investing in the energy transition is risky. Is that a viewpoint that you would agree with?
Not really. I think it's much more riskier not doing it. Because indeed, and we have been hearing this the last couple of days here, we have large ambitions when it comes to electrification, especially on the field of artificial intelligence, data centers, the whole transition to green electrons or to electrons, and not investing doesn't solve the problem. So I think it needs to be more investment and earlier investment, especially into the development of these projects, because without development, there are no projects.
And so you mentioned earlier state investment. Is there a different profile between an early state and a later state investment? So if we look directly at your company.
Well, of course, let's say the risk is slightly higher in the early stage, but also so are the returns. So basically, when we look at our investment profile, we are happy to take those risks, well aware that financing those risks relies mainly primarily on equity, of course. Equity that we generate through selling other projects that we have developed before, right? And then there we talk multiples, but then of course once the projects are built and operational, risk is significantly lower. It's still not zero because you need still to get your product sold, but there we talk about IRRs and that this is then bought by investors, infrastructure investors, and colleagues like Fabrice help to bridge that gap from one stage to the other of those assets.
And indeed, where there is risk, as you point out, there is often return, and healthy return. So Fabrice, if I can turn to you, one of the data points that I look at is BNEF have looked at this energy transition, and globally we look at about, to the end of 2024, about $2.1 trillion invested in energy transition. And if I kind of break down the top 3 places where we're seeing that, the majority at the moment is going to transport, so the electrification of transport. We're absolutely seeing investment in renewables as a supply, and we're seeing the third being grid. For that flavor of investment, I mean, predominantly a lot of that is coming out of debt markets. Now, you talk a little around private. I have seen private grow as a significant portion of that share of investment. Could you explain a little bit more about the role you see in private equity and private credit in supporting companies like Smart Energy kind of build out new facilities?
Yeah, sure. Well, the role of private capital, so private equity and private debt, is basically to scale up these efforts, to scale up this energy transition technologies and assets. Of course, we have different tools for different stages of maturity of investment. So we, at the development stage, so the riskier assets, we would invest more with equity. At a later stage, for construction or long-term operation of the assets, we could invest in debt. But basically, the role of private capital has been to, if I look at the past 15 years, there have been massive amounts invested, in particular in the energy production, green electricity assets everywhere around the globe. Now we are turning more to the second phase of the energy transition 2.0, which is about financing more integrated systems with, for example, solar production, storage, downstream interconnection, or the similar things in the sustainable fuels value chain. So the role of private capital is really to accelerate and scale up these new energy value chains, I would say.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And obviously, as we heard at the start in the introduction, Abu Dhabi has a view that it is wanting to be the leader in this space. And I know, Horst, you talked a little around some development in this region. Could you expand a little bit more about what you are specifically doing in the Middle East?
Yes, well, we are quite new to the region. It's 3 years now since we established ourselves here. We came around COP28, let's say the difference between this region and the region where we originally from, Europe, is of course the fast decision making. Decision is fast. The processes are less complex. Regulation is investment friendly. So I think it's a huge advantage. But of course, that happens here. If we talk about everything we've talked before, especially also on AI, it's good that these things happen here, but if those things only happen here and don't happen in the rest of the world, that's a problem. Because ultimately, the products, the services that you're going to offer, access to these data centers, you also need to have them in Europe, right? So, and there, the regulatory framework is much more difficult. So I think you can learn a lot from what's going on here. That should be implemented also abroad. Yeah? I think that's a key learning that we have felt here. And we see this as a hub. We are based in Switzerland, in Europe. So this is, let's say, a little bit like Switzerland used to be. So it's like the Arabic Switzerland. Yeah? So we see we can from here access the whole region. And the connections are good. The regulation is friendly. And I think that's a key advantage that Abu Dhabi brings to Smart Energy.
I think that's really encouraging to hear from a chairman of a great organization like yours, that this region is kind of ripe. It's kind of unblocking a lot of regulatory red tape that you're finding exists in Europe. Fabrice, on the investment side, I know you are also here and have a local presence. Do you echo the points that Horst was sharing?
Yeah, completely. And I would add that my belief is that the region has in particular a massive role to play in the green molecules space. Green molecules is hydrogen, sustainable fuels, biomethane. Of course, there is a fantastic expertise of molecules here. There is cheap, or the ability to produce cheap electricity, which is a key component of hydrogen production. And so we see a huge potential for green molecules in the region. For me, green molecules is a bit like you know, the new solar. 15 years ago, solar was super exciting. Photovoltaic energy was deployed everywhere. Green Molecules is the new solar, and I think the region can be a major hub for that revolution.
No, that's really interesting. And I think you touched on the introduction around aviation and investment in aviation. Is that something you could share a little with our audience here as well?
Well, indeed, we have that on our core strategies. So decarbonizing aviation, and especially making sure on the short term that regulation is met, because there's active regulation already in Europe and in other places of the world, where a certain amount of sustainable aviation fuel now, in the future ESAF, that's even more strict. There's a sub-quota for ESAF that needs to be fulfilled, and if that sub-quota is not fulfilled, or the quota is not fulfilled, there are huge penalties that affect the airline or the airline business. It's a pity that it needs to be like this, because it should be natural, but there's a real problem with the pricing, of course, because you have jet fuel at, let's say, $1,000, and you have ESAF most likely at 6,000. So there is a huge difference on the pricing, but it's necessary, because we cannot just continue like we are, and global transport and travel will double by 2050. That means that if we're talking about decarbonizing, we need to decarbonize that for sure, to ensure that this can be done. But also at the same time, we need to make sure that there's still sufficient funding available to decarbonize the electrification. So it's quite a monster challenge to do both things at the same time. It's huge. And it's just the tip of the iceberg what we're doing now. Much more needs to be done. If you look at the investment that went into oil and gas, and if you really want to be serious about what needs to happen afterward, they need to coexist. That's clear. Everybody knows that. But the investment levels need to rise a lot to be able to achieve that goal. And that's something that also the region is pushing. And I think others need to follow, and fast.
And it's born of innovation in this region, by my understanding. Is that correct?
Sorry again?
It's born of innovation in this region, specifically around aviation, that you're working.
Well, I think
Middle East.
this region is, of course, pushing it, but also Europe is very well established and pushing it. The difficulty in Europe is, of course, you need to align many countries on a certain agenda. Here, things might be a little bit more straightforward, because it's easier to implement, but it doesn't solve if only one region does it. So I think, again, this region can be the front runner in showing how things can be done at scale and profitable, to show how others need to fast follow, because that's, I think, how it can work.
And I agree with you. I think scale is critically important. There's a fashion at the moment for getting data centers, and by our analysis, by 2035, the energy demand from data centers alone is equivalent to the current energy demand of India.
Yeah.
It is extraordinary. So there is scale required. Fabrice, is there capital available to support this scaling?
Yeah, I think so, but the amounts required are huge. I'm also convinced that the efficiency of data center and AI will improve, so there will be a bit less energy per megawatt needed in a way. But yes, there is capital available. We've made a few investments in data centers in Europe already, and of course it's a major topic for investors at the moment, for our LPs, and so I guess we'll have more capital allocated to that space in the coming years. Yeah.
That's wonderful. I want to thank you both for sharing a little in the journey. I don't know about you, our audience, but this is a very exciting bridge of innovation, both at the scale of deploying the transition, both in supply and demand, and also innovation in financing as well, the ability to do it. Thank you both for joining me on this stage. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you to our audience.